there's, the kind of coverage that takes place. Either there's very little attention paid to the subject, or it's a dismissive kind of attention, because it does no good to anybody's career to cover this stuff. And you and I probably could speak to that. I mean, it hasn't got me fired or anything, but I think it's probably put a cap on how high I could go or other jobs I could get. And I don't know if that's true for you in print media or online media or not.
The companies that we work for have told us we need to be careful about the stories we research and write about.
Have you ever had the knock at the door? You ever had somebody tell you that you've gone too far or threaten you or anything like that?
Somewhere beyond our government, beyond top secret, we're being told what we should and shouldn't report on. And I think it's not the way...
Lee Spiegel, before the break, you made an interesting point about the freedom you have to pursue stories about paranormal, and I have similar freedom. Nobody's, it doesn't have to go to the CIA or the NSA or somebody like that for clearance. But before we leave this part of this discussion, you produced 1,500 programs on the unexplained for NBC Radio. How many of those made it onto NBC Evening News? And I ask it in this context.
Right.
We know Terry Hansen, who wrote that book, The Missing Times, had documented from public sources FOIA requests that the CIA had thousands of people, journalists, on his payroll at some point. We know from the Robertson panel that they were concerned about UFOs, and they instituted a policy where they're going to try to debunk the whole thing. CIA has had the ability to influence the ebb and flow of news. And even if you don't have like an NSA censor at the networks, they don't cover this stuff. I mean, they don't think it's credible. They don't pay it much attention. So the effect is really the same, isn't it?
It is. And an identical situation had occurred in the United Kingdom, where our mutual friend Nick Pope used to work for the British Ministry of Defense. He told me about a year ago that while he was working at the MOD, a policy was put into place called spin and dirty tricks. And what that meant was that any interesting UFO stories that might have been considered possible issues of national security were to be debunked as much as possible, and that in fact the people who reported the UFO encounters were to be ridiculed as much as possible to keep people from going public with this stuff. And when I asked Nick, why would the Ministry of Defense do that kind of a policy, he said, well, because there was a higher up decision that was made which said we can't tell the public that there are things operating in the skies above us that we're supposed to protect, and that we can't touch, we can't catch them, and we don't know what it is, so it's better to just try and sweep it under the rug. And I suspect that other countries have made similar decisions. I mean, George, you and I know, whenever there's an interesting UFO story that's coming up that could warrant national attention, do we see it at the top of the newscast? No. Do we see it before the weather or the sports? No. It's thrown in with a little introduction between the anchors of some laughter, with like a minute and a half left in the newscast. That's where they toss these things. Yeah. And that doesn't help the credibility of these stories one bit.
Yeah, it's down there with the water skiing squirrel, the voiceover of the water skiing squirrel.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much credibility I give to that either. I think it was all photoshopped. But still, there is this ongoing stigma.
Oh, I agree with you. I don't think there's disclosure is happening. There's not going to be any kind of major announcement. There might be leaks here or there, but I don't think it's in the interest of any president to do it. It would dominate the coverage. It would subject that president to ridicule. He wouldn't be able to get anything else done. And in addition, disclose what? What is it exactly? Yeah. I mean, a lot of this stuff is already out, whether people want to believe it or not. And then the stuff that might be classified, there might be a good reason for it to be classified. I go back and forth with it. I believe in the right to know. The Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, that's my religion. But there might be something in there that really would disturb a society and shake our social institutions to the foundation.
I think you're completely right. We cannot assume that we know who's making the decisions about this stuff and why. I don't have a need to know. I don't think you have a need to know, and I'm okay with that. But I'm more concerned with people who are being deliberately ridiculed. I think that kind of stuff has to stop if it's at all possible. Okay.
I was going to ask you about this video. We only got a couple of minutes left, so I want to ask you about this video from the surface of Mars. You had sent it to me the other day. I don't know if you've written your piece on it yet. What are you finding?
Yeah. Well, I'm holding it for tomorrow because I'm waiting and expecting tomorrow to talk to an image scientist out at the JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, who can give me some information about this. Basically, earlier this past week, the JPL released, and you can even go on their site, they actually have a page. It's called Raw Images from the Mars Curiosity rover. I just caution people, don't believe everything you see without checking it out, doing your own legwork. Don't just go to websites and pay attention and think, oh, this is great. It must be aliens from Mars, and, why aren't we being told about this?
Yeah, I think what was intriguing to me about the second shot is that, it had one object up above the horizon, then the other shot was below the horizon as if it had moved. Yeah. So an object below the horizon, you would think that's not a star or another planet or something like that.
Right. But if the camera had moved just a little bit, then it would appear to be below, below the tops of the mountains. So I just want someone tomorrow at JPL to say to me, here's what we think it is. Again, George, if they wanted to hide this kind of stuff, they wouldn't have made it public on their actual JPL website.
You think they do that? You think they hide stuff?
That's right. Stick the knife in and then twist it. See what I'll say.
Maybe you can answer that question after you get your phone call from them tomorrow. Well, I mean, government.
Ask me the question again when I see you in 3 weeks.
All right. Well, let's say in general, if not specific to JPL, but you think that government images, documents, reports are cleansed of stuff that regarding UFOs they don't want us to see.
Well, since you've asked me point blank, I am going to say, and I never give this attitude out of my stories. I like to stay neutral. But yeah, I think because of the large numbers of people who have come forward over the years, who've worked for the government in different facilities, who seem to be very credible, and don't mind, they're retired, so it's not going to be like they're going to have their careers killed or anything, or themselves killed. I think that there's enough evidence from people who were in the know that says that some stuff has been kept from the public. We know just from the huge amounts of previously classified documents that our government has been involved with many encounters with UFOs on many occasions where these things outperformed any of our aircraft in doing maneuvers and things that we couldn't possibly have the same kind of equipment or aircraft to compete with them. So there's too much anecdotal information. Airline pilots won't publicly talk about things that they've seen that have come close to their aircraft because they know it would be a career killer if they ever went public with these things. And yet we know that there are many pilots who have seen these things and had encounters and who will only talk to former NASA scientist Dr. Richard Haynes, who has his own organization called NARCAP. It's only for pilots who will report to him in complete confidence about what they've seen. Those are the kind of reports I'm really interested in.
I'd like to hear you talk about, we're out of time, though, is about the Vatican. If there was ever going to be disclosure by a world leader, I think this Pope might be the guy. I mean, he's really making waves, and the Vatican has shown it is certainly open to discussing ET matters and UFOs and things of that sort, and that it would not necessarily represent a threat to the church. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy might be the one to say something. And in 30 seconds, can you agree or disagree? Or
I totally agree. About a month ago at one of his morning masses, Pope Francis said in front of the throngs of people in the Vatican that if Martians were to visit us and asked to be baptized, who are we to say no? And that went around the world. And also, my friend, maybe Ted Peters, Lutheran minister.
Sure.
He spent 15 years in Italy spending time with with Vatican astronomers. Most people don't know that the Vatican has their own observatories. What are they looking for in outer space, I wonder?
Yeah. Hey, Lee Spiegel, it's great talking to you. I look forward to seeing your presentation at the MUFON Symposium in July, and look forward to chatting with you off the record and off the air as well. Thanks for being here.